So I do a book show in Much, where talk to
You do what?
a book show.
Oh.
Talk to different people about fave books that you've read and how it's inspired you, or what you learned from it, or something like that.
Mhm.
So do you have a book that that comes back to you every once in a while?
Yeah, well, I've read Perfume by Patrick Susskind about 10 times in my life, and I can't stop reading it. It's like something that's just stationary in my pocket all the time. It just doesn't leave me, and every time I'm bored, like I'm on an airplane or something, I read it over and over again. Because I'm a hypochondriac, and it just affects me. It makes me want to cut my nose off.
What's the book about?
It's about this perfume apprentice in France at the turn of the century, and he is just disgusted basically with all humans, and he just can't get away from humans. So he goes on this trek, this walk of death, where he goes into the rural areas where there's woods all over the place in the small villages, and he only travels by night, and he just, every time he smells human, like a fire from a far off way, he'll just get really disgusted and hide, and he just tries to stay away from people. I can relate to that.
Do you ever use what you read in any of your songs?
As a matter of fact, I use that very story in Scentless Apprentice. Yeah. So that's really one of the first times that I've ever used an actual story, as a book, as an example of a song. I've always tried to stay away from that, but now that I'm running out of ideas more and more, I tend to do that.
Is it hard when you spend your whole life doing the first few albums, and then suddenly everybody needs your attention? You have to do interviews, you have to travel around, and suddenly is it hard to come up with ideas?
I don't know. I've just noticed that people expect more of a thematic angle with our music. They always want to read into it. And before, I was just using pieces of poetry and just garbage, just stuff that just would spew out of me at the time. And a lot of times when I write lyrics, it's just at the last second because I'm really lazy. So, and then I find myself having to come up with explanations for it, So I thought I'd, prevent that this time and actually have an explanation for some of the songs at least.
There's a lot of baby references in all the songs. I didn't think there would be, but you have like wombs, babies, baby's breath, baby throw up, baby
throw up?
There's baby everywhere.
Lying.
This is obviously become a huge part of your life.
It has been a part of my life before Courtney was even pregnant, though. I've always been just fascinated with medical texts and charts, and I guess I secretly want to be a doctor or something. I don't know. Or a person that works in a cremation factory. I don't know. I've always liked anatomy. Ever since I was a little kid. When I first got that little model of the Invisible Man, or the Visible Man. It's just something I really like. And since I've become a big rock star and made a bunch of money, I found this place in the Mall of America in Minneapolis that sells nothing but medical stuff. It's a medical supply store that they've offered to the public. It's really great. I bought all these fetuses and anatomy men and charts and stuff, and it was like a dream come true. Because I've always been really poor, and if I could find something like that in a secondhand store, I'd barely have enough money to buy it. And a lot of times I couldn't buy that stuff, so I just went on this rampage of buying all this stuff. And I think I've overused it, for like pictures for the album, and I don't know. I just went overboard on it.
The old saying that you can't buy happiness. You think that's true?
Well, yeah, you can't buy happiness. I mean, that made me happy for a little while. But, I mean, I was just probably almost just as happy with, I don't know, I look back on going to secondhand stores and stuff like that and finding a little treasure like that. And that actually meant more to me because it was more of a stab in the dark in a way, because you didn't know if you're going to be able to afford it, and you don't know what you're really looking for, and when you find it, it's more special to you rather than having $1,000 and going into a store like that and just buying the whole store. It's not as special.
because you've achieved so much success, I mean, so quickly, so surprisingly, you've had a baby, you're married. What excites you now?
My baby and my marriage. I don't know. I still like playing too. I mean, Chris and Dave and I haven't changed at all. I mean, believe it or not, we get along just as well as we ever did. You know, we're just as the same passive-aggressive people as we used to be. You know, we never fight. And when we're pissed off at each other, we just hold it under our breath and have respect for one another in that way. You know, it's just, it's easier to work that way. You know, because we have a mission, I guess.
How do you personally cope with having relationships, private relationships that are always being scrutinized publicly? It must be really difficult.
Well, it is, but I mean, I still have a lot of the same friends that I used to have, so they don't seem to mind, and that isn't ever really exposed too much. You know, no one writes about how me and my friend Dylan walked down the street and, you know, did whatever, but
yeah, but they rip apart you and Courtney. They love to do that.
Yeah, I don't know why, but you know, we're just I don't know. I guess like my ego could be talking right now, and I could say, well, we're interesting people, you know, but I think we're just easy scapegoats. It's just, you know, it started with something, and then, you know, people just pick up on it and carry it along, and we turn into cartoon characters, and there's nothing I can do about it, really. You know, I can threaten to sue and, you know, try to you know, bring up libel laws and stuff like that to people that write shit like that about us, but, you know, if you've ever looked into that, it's pretty much a lost cause. You have to have a lot of money to do that, and, you know, I could spend the money that I earned last year all on fighting the Vanity Fair piece, you know, and they'd end up winning because they have more money, you know, so.
There's a magazine in Canada that incorporates itself for each issue, and then it goes bankrupt on each issue so that it could write whatever it wants and no one could ever sue them.
Wow, that's a pretty smart thing to do.
Yeah, it is.
That kind of reminds me of how a lot of stations in the States got a hold of our new album, but it was like someone had anonymously sent them like 5th generation cassette copies of our new album, and in order for them to play it, they started on the weekend at 5 o'clock, like on Friday nights. That way they could play it throughout the rest of the weekend without having a council, you know, sue them. And I don't know, that's kind of smart, you know.
It's free publicity for you anyway. Ultimately, the album's going to come out.
That's true, but the thing is that there's been so much controversy about how bad the record sounds, you know, and how lo-fi it is. And to hear it like that compared to all the other songs that were on the radio that night, it really disgusted me, and it pissed me off because it sounded terrible. It sounded really, really bad. And then everyone that heard it that weekend is going to say, yeah, you're right. Okay, the stories are true. The Nirvana album really sucks, and I'm not going to buy it, you know. So it just kind of bothered me, but we took care of it.
What'd you do?
Well, I thought maybe we should hire a lawyer to stop them to do it. Then instead, I just decided to hire a hitman.
Pardon me?
Nothing. Erase that. No, we just called them up on Monday and told them to stop.
And they went, oh, okay.
Well, our lawyer did that. Yeah.
Isn't it a weird world for you to suddenly have lawyers and like people who do stuff like that for you?
Yeah. It's totally unnecessary too. If we weren't in this position, we wouldn't need lawyers, you know? It's total unnecessary, and we have to spend a lot of money just to protect ourselves all the time, and it's just stupid.
When did that first hit you? When did you realize that you're going to need some people on your team to protect you from the vultures?
Too late. You know, much after the fact, after we'd already been damaged to a point where it, you know, almost didn't do any good, you know. But I don't know, it was just a weird realization one day, you know. Wow, I have to, you know, and I can see how like rock and roll stars will all of a sudden, will almost compromise their music to make sure that they sell the same amount of records next year because they've spent all their money on lawyers and protecting themselves last year, you know. But I mean, we obviously haven't done that. I mean, I don't know, maybe you might not have noticed, but the record isn't as commercial as the last one, so. we could never bring ourselves to do that, you know. I'd rather just laugh about it. And I don't know.
I was talking to Amy Mann, a girl from Till Tuesday. She was at our office just a couple days ago. She's on tour with Ray or the Kinks, and Ray Davies was in the office also. He came in before her. And I had mentioned to her that he was very nice, but really eccentric when I was talking to him, kind of nutty. And she said, well, you know, there's a lot of people who have been around the record business for those many years, and most of them are kind of nutty. It just, you know, it makes people nutty.
Yeah.
I mean, you're facing that. That's your future.
Yeah, that's my future. Hopefully we'll put out Metal Machine music next year, you know. I don't know. Either I've accepted it or I've gone beyond insane to where I can deal with it emotionally. I really don't care. I know that I'm too stubborn to allow myself to ever compromise their music or, you know, get so wrapped up in it and involved to where it's going to, you know, turn us into big rock stars. I mean, I just don't feel like that. Everyone else accuses us of it, but, you know, we're not as popular as everyone thinks, or we're not as rich as everyone thinks, you know? It's just, we've always had a good sense of humor. I don't think that's been translated very well, you know, but we'd rather laugh about it. Ha ha ha.
You know what really surprised me though is you're pretty bright, and your lyrics are, and just your whole stage persona is pretty angry, angst-ridden, frustrated. I mean, you see the world for what it is. Did you ever have second thoughts about bringing a child into the world the way it is?
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. I really can't describe what changed our attitude so fast. I think, you know, I really was a lot more negative and angry and everything else a few years ago, but that had a lot to do with not having a mate, you know, not having a steady girlfriend and stuff like that. So you know, that was one of the main things that was bothering me, that I wouldn't admit at the time, you know. So now that I've found that, the world seems a lot better for some reason, you know. It really does change your attitude about things, you know. I mean, 4 years ago I would have said, you know, the classic thing like, you know, how dare someone bring a child into this life, you know. It's completely a terrible way to go, and, you know, the world's going to explode any day and stuff like that. But once you fall in love, it's a bit different.
I don't want to know about it. Stop. George and I are not in the best love situations right now, so we'll stop talking about that. We'll change the subject.
Okay.
What I want to talk to you about.
I'm not boasting about it. It's just
no, it's
something
nice.
that's really
it's really nice
weird.
to talk about it. That, you know, that you have something like that to talk about. It's nice. You know.
Can you hold this for a while? Do you mind? I'm feeling a little weak.
You know that this whole grunge thing, that there's in quotations grunge, all I want to know is, where did the term come from?
I have no idea. I think some of the rumors are that Jonathan Poneman said it one time sarcastically, and it just caught on.
Who's that?
He's one of the head honchos at Sub Pop Records. But no one set out to market this music as that, you know. Just, you know, that's what happens when the media catches on. You know, they have to call it something. I like it as much as new wave. I would have been proud to be a new waver, you know, 15 years ago.
Oh yeah, well, we were about the same age. I was into new wave, absolutely. Do you think you
Me
have
too.
some of the same? Is there anything the same between your music and new wave?
I think so.
Like what?
Well, like, you know, new wave was just a progression from punk rock and a mutation of punk rock, you know, and it was more commercial and more palatable, you know. It had, you know, punk rock roots, and it was easier to swallow for the media and middle America and the middle of the world, and it's just, you know, that's what I kind of think about our music.
Are you worried about a Nirvana backlash?
Hasn't that already been over with? Hasn't that already happened? I don't know. Sure. No. I don't know.
Okay. What else I want to talk to you about?
But we're getting more new wave as the days go by. I think we're going to reinvent new wave and bring back breakdancing. I'd really like to bring back new wave and breakdancing, you know, meld it to something. I don't know. That's what our new music is sounding like. We're using a lot more effects boxes, and we haven't resorted to skinny ties, but I think our music's, you know, this album's like the closing of the chapter of the formula we've been using, you know. It's like grunge is really kind of boring for us, you know. It's something we can't deny, and we're not going to stop playing the old songs live. Whoops. And but you know, our tastes are just changing so rapidly that we're really experimenting with a lot of stuff, and it might get too indulgent and be really embarrassing for the next album, but we can't put out another album, and this is just like the last chapter of 3-chord grunge music for us. And it was an easy thing to do and a safe thing to do because we knew it's still popular, you know, but we had to get it out of our systems.
How come you are so nice and you seem so comfortable with yourself? Something must have really happened in the last couple of years. Is it just falling in love?
No.
What happened?
I've always been a nice guy.
Maybe you were afraid to show it before. How's that?
Well, I don't know. You've never met me before.
I never met
so.
you before, but I know that other people who have had the opportunity to interview, and they said, oh, he hates doing interviews. He's not going to want to talk about anything.
Well,
I said, well, you know, whatever. Who knows? And you're just like exactly the opposite of.
It just depends on what mood I'm in, really. Yeah, I'm kind of a moody person, and a lot of times when someone has had the chance to talk to me, I've probably been on tour, or I've probably gone through an exhaustive time where I've talked about myself for hours and hours, and this week I haven't had to talk about myself very much, so
Lucky
probably
me.
more cooperative.
I think one of the interesting things about Nirvana that you don't really talk about that much is that you're very concerned about sexism. I like that. That's good. So how do you make people aware of that problem?
By writing songs as blunt as Rape Me. Having to resort to doing something like that is almost embarrassing because people didn't understand when we wrote a song like About a Girl or Polly, and having to explain that and having misunderstandings about it, I decided to write Rape Me in a way that was just so blunt and obvious that it's like no one could deny it, you know, no one could read into it any other way, you know, although some people have actually, because some of the lyrics in it, some people have thought that maybe it has something to do with my disgust with the media and the way they've treated us and stuff like that, but it's not true. That's not what the song's about at all. It's just my way of, in a sarcastic way almost, of like just saying how obvious do we have to be, you know. And I guess we don't talk about those kind of things that, you know, that are really important to us because I don't want to be thought of as like nothing more than a PC band, you know. I mean, we're entertainers. You know, that's what music is, and so it's really hard to, you know, step over the lines, you know.
It's that you have so much power because that camera's on you. Right, you can use it.
Yeah, well, we try to use our power. I mean, we really have been effective in certain ways, like being associated with this organization called FAIR, and I can't remember it right now because I have a mental block of exactly what it stands for, but it's something like, shit, I can't remember. but they're an organization who looks at the injustices that are. They look at the details that surrounds certain issues and certain stories that have been reported in magazines and newspapers like USA Today, who tend to, you know, look over a lot of the facts, and they're pretty much a leftist organization that tries to protect people in certain areas, you know, and they supposedly try as hard as they can to, you know, to deliver the truth, And so, you know, we've done benefits like that for like No on 9 benefits to try to stop Portland's anti-gay laws that they were trying to pass, and we did a Bosnian benefit and stuff like that. And you know, it doesn't seem like much, but you know, we raised like $50,000 for the Bosnian rape victims, you know, and that's a lot more than we could have done griping about it and talking about it in interviews and like maybe putting out a fanzine. You know, there's nothing wrong with doing stuff like that, but you know, we're using the tools that we have, you know, and we're being effective as much as we can. But we still don't want to be too political at the same time, you know, because it's just kind of embarrassing to do that. Or, you know, you get a lot of ridicule for it.
Yeah, but you're doing what you believe in, and that's the most important thing.
Well, it's hard not to, you know. I mean, if you're put in this position, what are you going to do? You become a Republican or something, you know? Just to protect what you've earned, big deal.
We're doing.
Sorry, I have to change tape.
Okay, I'm going to ask a couple more questions and then let you free.
Okay.
I am rolling.
Okay.
Is it all right to smoke on Canadian television?
It's too late now. You're already out of sure. Do what you want.
I've only had
we're
3.
doing a special on the Replacements, and I was just wondering if they had at all any influence on you as a songwriter, on the music you make.
I kind of wish they did, because there's so many comparisons to us, you know. I have to be honest, I really didn't like the Replacements when I was into punk rock music. I listened to them, and I mean, I liked the sound of it, and I don't know if that, I think my appreciation for R.E.M. and the Beatles and stuff like that had more to do with it, because I really wasn't aware of Soul Asylum and the Replacements and those bands. I mean, I knew about them, and I actually saw them live and stuff, and I just didn't get it. I didn't like it that much.
And can we have a comment, please, on... I'll wait till you light this one, because this is such an... What is your comment on Muzak being or being here at the capital of Muzak, being here in Seattle?
Well, it's an obvious thing to happen, you know. Something that you'd expect. Oh, I thought you were talking about the Muzak this Muzak record that they put out of Grunge Light.
Oh, the Grunge Light. Oh, what do you think of that?
It's
that
great.
Girl?
Sure. It's an obvious thing to happen, you know. It's the last chapter on the book of grunge. But the Muzak capital, that's where, so this is the place where most Muzak comes from? I didn't even know that. I thought there was just, you know, one station here.
Seattle is the capital of Muzak.
Thanks for letting me know about that.
You thought it was grunge? No. No, we were there, but they're not doing your songs.
Oh, bummer.
They said it was too aggressive? It would make people too excited.
Oh, well. We have some pretty songs too. God, that's really a bummer. That upsets me. But I don't know. Muzak, that's pretty neat.
But they didn't like the Grunge Light album because the woman sent a copy to them, and
Really?
they didn't like it because it was too electronic, and they're into using real musicians.
Oh yeah, I like that idea better too. Yeah. I liked it when Devo did their Muzak version of their songs. That was really neat. Did you ever hear that? That was nice. And I think they use real musicians for that.
Did you get to hang out with them, Devo?
Mm-hmm.
I know that you're a bit of a fan of theirs.
No. Never met them.
Did you get to meet anyone who would be like your hero? Anyone that you're real pleased that you got to meet?
Yeah. That's kind of a positive side of being a rock and roll star. But no, actually I met Iggy Pop before we were rock and roll stars. And Iggy Pop is pretty much the only person that I've met that I really, really admire and like. And
when you met him, were you pleased?
Yeah, it was a big excitement. Yeah, it was great. I didn't ask him for an autograph. I tried not to bother him the way that I thought that I might be bothered. But I don't know. And then the other person is William Burroughs. I met him, and I actually got to put out a record with him. So.
Yeah, tell me about the record that you're doing with William Burroughs.
Well, it's already out. It's just a 10-inch. It's just one story of his called The Priest, They Called Him. And it was a long-distance recording. He had recorded his version, and then I just played a bunch of guitar noises in the background, and they mixed it somewhere else, and it came out. And now we're talking about putting out a whole album.
Wow.
Yeah.
Of him reading his work and you playing guitar underneath?
Yeah, I think I'll play a bunch of instruments this time instead of just, fucking off like I did before. It was just a last minute thing where I just made a bunch of noise, but this time I'd like to kind of work on it. Maybe I'll do a Muzak version.
I'm sure William Bros would love that, a little bit of Muzak. Let me just make sure I have all my questions asked, and this is one that Tori Amos, did you like the cover of Smiles?
Well, it served a purpose because we used that as the opening. Before we came out, we'd play that song, and then we'd come out and dance to it, do a little bit of interpretive dancing to it. Yeah, it was nice, yeah.
The last thing I want to ask you about is, I'm not sure who in your band said it, it could have been you, it could have been someone else, but someone being a little perturbed by your mainstream audience and wanting to just make music for your real fans.
Well, a couple of years ago when we were making these bold negative statements about things like that, we were really confused, and we were scared, we were afraid that we would lose a lot of our audience that meant a lot to us, because they're people that, we hopefully feel that we have a connection with, the college students and people in the underground, and I don't think we've lost them. I think they're still fans, so I'm not worried about it anymore. And I was at the time.